The morning sun painted golden streaks across the marble floor of the Chin mansion, but inside the grand kitchen, 8-year-old Lily trembled with fear. Her small hands shook as she reached for the can of baby formula hidden on the highest shelf. The kitchen was enormous, with white cabinets that stretched up to the ceiling and a large island in the center made of expensive granite. Crystal glasses sparkled in the sunlight that streamed through tall windows, and the smell of fresh flowers from the garden drifted inside. But despite all this beauty and wealth, the house felt cold and empty, like a museum where no one was allowed to touch anything or feel happy. In her thin arms, her baby brother Oliver whimpered softly, his tiny lips cracked and dry from 3 days without proper nourishment. The little boy was only 7 months old, with soft brown hair and big dark eyes that used to sparkle with curiosity. Now those same eyes were dull and tired, too weak to focus on anything for very long. His pale skin made Lily's heart break with worry, and she could feel how light he had become, like a small bird that might fly away at any moment. Lily stood on her tiptoes, stretching as far as she could, knowing that one spoonful of milk powder could save her brother's life. She was a small girl for her age, with long black hair that hung in tangles around her shoulders because no one had helped her brush it in days. Her pink dress, once pretty and new, was now wrinkled and stained from taking care of Oliver all by herself. The house felt cold and empty, just like it had for months since their stepmother Victoria had taken control of everything. Their father David had married Victoria 2 years ago, thinking she would be a loving mother to his children after his wife Emma died in childbirth. But Victoria only pretended to care when David was around. When he was away on business trips, which happened more and more often, she showed her true cruel nature. Lily whispered quiet prayers. Her fingertips finally touched the metal can. "Please, just 1 spoon. Oliver hasn't eaten for 3 whole days." The formula can was heavy in her small hands, and she had to be very careful not to drop it. She had tried so many times before to reach it, standing on chairs and even climbing on the counter, but Victoria had moved it higher each time. The sound of expensive heels clicking against the marble floor made Lily freeze in terror. Each click echoed through the large kitchen like a warning bell, getting closer and closer. Lily's heart started beating so fast she thought everyone could hear it pounding in her chest. She turned around slowly, clutching Oliver protectively against her chest, and saw Victoria standing in the doorway like a dark shadow. The woman's perfectly styled black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, not a single strand out of place. Her makeup was perfect, too, with dark red lipstick that looked like a slash of blood against her pale skin. Victoria was 35 years old, tall and elegant, with expensive taste in everything she wore. Today she had on a black designer dress that probably cost more money than most people made in a month, and her diamond earrings caught the light as she moved. But all her beauty and expensive clothes could not hide the cruelty in her dark eyes, which looked at Lily and Oliver like they were insects she wanted to crush under her shoe. Victoria wore a designer dress and diamond jewelry that sparkled even in the dim kitchen light, but her face was twisted with anger. "What do you think you're doing, you little thief?" Victoria's voice was sharp and cold like a knife cutting through the air. Every word she spoke was filled with hatred and disgust. Lily's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. The baby formula can slipped from her small hands and crashed to the floor with a loud bang that seemed to echo forever. White powder exploded everywhere like snow, covering the expensive marble tiles, and making a mess that would take hours to clean up. Oliver started crying weakly, his voice hoarse and broken from days of hunger and thirst. His tiny body shook in Lily's arms, and she could feel his fever burning through his thin clothes. The sight of the spilled formula on the floor made Lily want to cry, because she knew it was Oliver's only chance for food, and now it was ruined and wasted. Victoria stormed across the kitchen, her expensive shoes crushing the spilled formula under her feet without any care. Each step left white footprint behind her, but she didn't notice or care about the mess she was making. She grabbed the empty can from where it had rolled under the table and threw it against the wall so hard that it left a dent in the expensive wallpaper. The sound of metal hitting the wall was so loud that it made Oliver cry even harder. "You ungrateful brat. That formula costs more money than you're worth," she screamed, her face twisted with rage. Her voice was so loud and angry that it seemed to shake the whole house. Lily fell to her knees on the hard marble floor, still holding Oliver tightly, tears streaming down her dirty cheeks. The white powder from the formula got on her dress and in her hair, but she didn't care about anything except protecting her baby brother. Please, please, Victoria, just one spoonful. Oliver is so sick and weak. He hasn't eaten anything for 3 days. I'm begging you. The little girl's voice was broken with sobs, but she tried to stay strong for her baby brother. She remembered the words her mother had whispered before she died, giving birth to Oliver. Take care of each other, no matter what happens. Their mother Emma had been kind and gentle, with a soft voice and warm hugs that made everything better. She used to read bedtime stories and sing lullabies, and she always made sure Lily and Oliver had everything they needed. Emma had long brown hair like Lily's, and eyes that sparkled with love whenever she looked at her children. She had been excited about having a new baby, buying tiny clothes and soft blankets, painting the nursery with happy colors. But something went wrong during the birth, and the doctors couldn't save her. David was heartbroken and lost, and that's when Victoria came into their lives. At first, Victoria seemed nice and caring, bringing flowers at Emma's funeral and offering to help take care of the children. But as soon as she married David and moved into the mansion, everything changed. The house that used to be filled with laughter and love became cold and scary. Victoria was nothing like the kind woman who had given birth to them and loved them with all her heart. Victoria laughed cruelly, a sound like breaking glass, and slapped Lily hard across the face, leaving a red mark on her pale cheek. The slap was so hard that Lily's head snapped aside and stars danced in front of her eyes. The slap made Lily's ears ring with a high-pitched sound that wouldn't go away, but she didn't let go of Oliver. She curled her small body around her baby brother, trying to protect him from Victoria's anger like a shield. Her cheek burned with pain where Victoria had hit her, and she could taste blood in her mouth from where she bit her tongue. But she didn't cry out or complain, because she knew that would only make Victoria angrier and more dangerous. You dare ask me for anything after what you did? Victoria shouted, her voice echoing through the large kitchen and probably through the whole house. Her face was red with fury, and the veins in her neck stood out like ropes. Your father is away on business, and while he's gone, I make the rules in this house. That baby doesn't need expensive formula every day. A little hunger will make him stronger. Lily looked up with wide, frightened eyes that were filled with tears. She couldn't understand how any grown-up could be so mean to a helpless baby. But he's just a baby. He needs milk to grow and be healthy. Lily's voice was small and scared, but she had to speak up for Oliver because he couldn't speak for himself. Victoria's face turned even redder with fury, like a balloon that was about to pop. She was so angry that she was shaking, and her hands were clenched into tight fists. She grabbed a glass of water from the counter, one of the expensive crystal glasses that had belonged to Emma, and threw at the wall as hard as she could. The glass shattered into 1,000 pieces with a crash that was even louder than the formula hitting the floor. The broken glass scattered across the expensive marble tiles like dangerous diamonds, and some of the sharp pieces cut Lily's bare legs as they bounced and rolled. Tiny drops of blood appeared on Lily's skin, but the little girl bit her lip to keep from crying out in pain. She didn't want to make Victoria even angrier than she already was, and she was more worried about Oliver than about her own cuts and bruises. The sight of the broken glass everywhere made the kitchen look like a battlefield, with white powder and sparkling pieces covering the floor. Victoria seemed to enjoy the destruction she was causing, like she was getting pleasure from breaking beautiful things and hurting innocent people. At that exact moment, as if sent by an angel, the front door of the mansion opened with a loud bang that echoed through all the rooms. Heavy footsteps echoed to the long hallway, getting closer and closer to the kitchen with each second. The footsteps were strong and purposeful, like someone who was used to being in charge and making important decisions. Victoria's angry expression suddenly changed to fear as she heard a deep, familiar voice calling out from somewhere in the house. The voice was tired from traveling, but still powerful and commanding. Victoria, what's all this noise? I could hear shouting from outside. The voice belonged to David Chun, Lily and Oliver's father. He was a successful businessman who owned several companies and was known all over the city for being tough but fair in his dealings. David was 42 years old, tall and strong, with broad shoulders and hands that were used to hard work. He had gray streaks in his thick black hair that made him look distinguished and important, and his eyes were usually kind when he looked at his children. David had been away for 2 long weeks on an important business trip to another country, trying to save one of his companies from going bankrupt. The trip had been exhausting, with long meetings every day and nights spent looking at numbers and contracts. He had missed his children terribly and had called home every night. But Victoria always answered the phone and said the children were sleeping or busy with something. She never let him talk to Lily directly, always making excuses about why it wasn't a good time. David had been worried and wanted to come home sooner, but the business deal was too important to leave unfinished. He had no idea what was happening at home while he was gone, no idea that his children were suffering and scared. As his footsteps got closer to the kitchen, Victoria quickly tried to fix her hair and wipe the angry expression from her face. She smoothed down her dress and tried to look calm and innocent, like a good mother who had been taking care of the children. But it was too late to hide what had happened. David appeared in the doorway and froze when he saw the terrible scene before him. The sight that met David's eyes made his blood run cold and his heart stopped beating for a moment. His 8-year-old daughter was kneeling on the floor covered in white powder, her face red from being slapped, with small cuts on her legs from broken glass that sparkled dangerously in the sunlight. Lily's hair was tangled and dirty. Her dress was torn and stained, and she looked like she hadn't eaten a good meal in days. In her thin arms was his baby son Oliver, who looked pale and weak and so much smaller than David remembered. The little boy's tiny body was trembling with hunger and sickness. His skin was hot with fever, and his breathing was too fast and shallow. Oliver's eyes, which used to be bright and curious, were now dull and unfocused, like he was too tired to really see anything around him. White formula powder was scattered everywhere across the expensive kitchen floor, mixed with pieces of broken crystal glass that caught the light like dangerous stars. The beautiful kitchen looked like a war zone, with evidence of violence and destruction everywhere David looked. Victoria stood over the children with her hands still raised in the air, frozen like a statue. Her face was flushed with anger and now fear as she realized she had been caught in the act of hurting David's children. Her perfect makeup was smeared, and her carefully styled hair was starting to come loose from its tight bun. For the first time since David had known her, Victoria looked scared and uncertain, like she didn't know what to say or do. "David, you're home early. I was just disciplining the children. They were being very naughty and—" Victoria started to speak quickly, her words tumbling over each other as she tried to explain the situation and make herself look innocent. But David raised his hand to stop her from talking, his eyes never leaving his children. He could see that Oliver was seriously ill, his little chest rising and falling too quickly, his skin burning hot with fever. Lily's eyes were filled with terror and pain, but also hope when she saw her father standing in the doorway like a hero coming to save them. "Daddy!" Lily cried out, her voice breaking with relief and joy and desperation all at the same time. Hearing her father's voice was like hearing music after being lost in silence for a very long time. "Please help Oliver. He's so sick and hungry. I tried to get him some milk, but—" She couldn't finish her sentence because she was crying too hard, all the fear and worry she had been holding inside for days finally coming out in big, choking sobs. David rushed forward without hesitation and knelt down beside his children on the hard marble floor, not caring that his expensive business suit was getting dirty from the spilled formula. His knees hit the floor hard, but he didn't notice the pain because all he could think about was his children. He gently took Oliver from Lily's arms, and the moment he touched his baby son, he could feel how much weight the little boy had lost. Oliver felt as light as a feather in his strong arms, when before he had been a chubby, healthy baby who smiled and laughed all the time. David's hand shook as he touched Oliver's face, feeling how thin and pale his son had become in just 2 weeks. The baby's skin was burning with fever, so hot it almost hurt to touch, and his breathing was shallow and weak like a small bird that was dying. Oliver's tiny fingers, which used to grab onto David's shirt and hold tight, now barely had the strength to move. David could see that his son was very sick, possibly dangerously sick, and needed medical attention right away. His heart filled with panic and rage as he realized what had been happening to his children while he was away working. How long has he been like this? David's voice was quiet but dangerous, like the calm before a terrible storm that would destroy everything in its path. He looked up at Victoria with eyes that blazed with fury hotter than fire. The look on his face was so intense and frightening that Victoria took a step backward, bumping into the kitchen counter behind her. Lily wiped her tears with the back of her small hand, leaving streaks of white powder on her dirty cheeks. Her voice was barely a whisper, so soft that David had to lean closer to hear her words. 3 days, Daddy. Oliver hasn't had milk for 3 whole days. I begged her, but she said no. She said he didn't need it, that it was too expensive, that we were ungrateful. As Lily spoke, David's face grew paler and paler, and his hands started shaking with rage. He couldn't believe that anyone could be so cruel to a helpless baby, especially someone he had trusted to take care of his children. He thought about all the nights he had been away, working late, and missing his family, while his children were at home suffering and scared. The guilt hit him like a punch in the stomach, making it hard for him to breathe. He had failed to protect the most important people in his life, and now Oliver might pay the price with his health or even his life. David stood up slowly, still holding Oliver carefully in his arms like the precious treasure he was. His face was pale with shock and red with anger at the same time, and his jaw was clenched so tight that the muscles stood out like ropes. He looked at Victoria with such intensity that she took another step backward, pressing herself against the kitchen counter as if she was trying to disappear. You let my son go without food for 3 days? His voice was so quiet it was almost a whisper, but everyone in the room could feel the terrible anger behind his words. It was the kind of quiet that came before an explosion, the kind of calm that meant something very bad was about to happen. Victoria tried to defend herself, her voice high and nervous like a child who had been caught doing something wrong. David, you don't understand. These children are spoiled. They need discipline. A little hunger never hurt anyone. Besides, formula's expensive, and we need to teach them the value of money. Her words sounded hollow and stupid even to her own ears, and she could see that David wasn't believing any of her excuses. David's jaw tightened even more, and his eyes became as cold as ice in the middle of winter. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly calm, which was somehow more frightening than if he had been shouting. The value of money, he repeated slowly, like he was tasting each word and finding it bitter. You're talking about the value of money while my baby son is starving in my arms? He turned to look at Lily, who was still kneeling on the floor among the broken glass, and spilled formula, and his heart broke when he saw how thin and frightened his little daughter had become. Her arms were covered in small bruises, probably from Victoria grabbing her and shaking her, and there were dark circles under her eyes from not sleeping well. She looked like a little ghost of the happy, laughing child she used to be before Emma died and Victoria came into their lives. David realized that he had been so focused on his work and his business that he had missed all the signs that his children were in danger. The next few hours passed like a nightmare that seemed to go on forever. David wrapped Oliver in a soft blanket and rushed him to hospital, while Lily sat quietly in the backseat of the car, holding her baby brother's tiny hand and whispering gentle words to try to comfort him. The drive to hospital felt like it took forever, even though David was driving as fast as he safely could. Every red light seemed to last an eternity, and every turn felt like it was taking him further away from help instead of closer to it. Oliver was so weak that he barely cried anymore, just making small whimpering sounds that broke David's heart into a million pieces. Lily kept talking to her brother in a soft, gentle voice, telling him stories about the games they would play when he felt better and the toys they would share. Her voice was shaky with worry, but she was trying to be brave for Oliver's sake. At the hospital, the doctors and nurses rushed Oliver into the emergency room, while David and Lily waited in a small room with uncomfortable chairs and bright fluorescent lights. The smell of disinfectant filled the air, and the sound of machines beeping echoed through the hallways. David held Lily close to his chest while they waited, feeling her small body shake with exhaustion and fear. After what felt like hours, a doctor came out to talk to them. She was a kind-looking woman with gray hair and gentle eyes, but her expression was serious and worried. "Mr. Chun," she said softly, "your son is severely dehydrated and malnourished. His blood sugar is dangerously low, and he has a high fever that we're working to bring down. He needs to stay in a hospital for several days while we get him healthy again." The doctor paused and looked at Lily, then back at David. "We also need to ask some questions about how this happened. Children don't usually become this sick without someone noticing." As David watched the nurses put tubes and wires on his baby son's frail body, connecting him to machines that would help him get better, he made a decision that would change everything. Oliver looked so small and helpless in the big hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines and bright lights. His tiny chest rose and fell with each breath, and his little hands were taped with tubes that fed medicine and nutrition directly into his body. David pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called his lawyer, a man he had known for many years and trusted completely. "James," he said when his lawyer answered, "I need you to prepare divorce papers immediately. I also need you to help me report Victoria for child neglect and abuse. I have 2 children who almost died because of her cruelty." His voice was steady and determined, but inside he was burning with rage and guilt. David also called the police to report what had happened to his children. The officer who came to take his statement was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who specialized in cases involving children. She listened carefully as David explained everything he had found when he came home, and she took pictures of Lily's bruises and cuts. Lily was scared to talk to the police at first, but the officer was very gentle and patient, and eventually Lily told her about all the times Victoria had been mean to her and Oliver. She told the officer about being locked in her room without dinner, about Victoria throwing away food so the children couldn't eat it, and about the many times Victoria had hit her when David wasn't home. The officer's face grew angrier and angrier as she listened, and she promised David that Victoria would be punished for what she had done. When they returned to the mansion 2 days later, after Oliver was stable enough to come home from the hospital, Victoria was gone. She had packed her expensive clothes and jewelry and disappeared in the middle of the night, knowing that David would never forgive her for what she had done to his children. All her designer dresses, her diamond necklaces, her fancy shoes, everything was gone except for a note she had left on David's desk. The note said she was sorry and that she had only been trying to teach the children discipline, but David crumpled it up and threw it in the trash without reading the whole thing. He didn't want to hear any more of her lies and excuses. The house felt different without her cold presence, warmer and more peaceful, like it had been when their mother Emma was alive. The servants, who had been afraid of Victoria and afraid to speak up about what they had seen, finally told David the truth about how badly she had treated Lily and Oliver when he was away. In the weeks and months that followed, David took time off from his business to take care of Lily and Oliver personally. He realized that all the money in the world didn't matter if he wasn't there to protect his children and make sure they were happy and healthy. He learned how to change diapers, something he had never done before, because Emma had always taken care of the babies. He learned how to warm baby bottles to the perfect temperature, testing the milk on his wrist the way the nurses had shown him at the hospital. He learned how to braid Lily's hair for school, though his first attempts were clumsy and crooked, making Lily giggle as she gently showed him the right way to do it. Every morning, he would sit with Lily at the breakfast table and ask about her dreams, her friends, and her hopes for the future. He wanted to know everything about her life, all the things he had missed while he was working too much. Every evening, David would read bedtime stories to Lily, while Oliver slept peacefully in his crib nearby. The crib was in David's bedroom now, because he wanted to be close to his son in case Oliver needed anything during the night. David's voice was rusty at first, because he hadn't read stories in a long time, but gradually got better at doing different voices for all the characters. Lily would curl up next to her father on his big bed, her head resting on his shoulder while he read about brave princesses and talking animals and magical adventures. Sometimes Oliver would wake up and gurgle happily, as if he was listening to the stories too. These quiet evening moments became the most precious part of David's day, more important than any business meeting or contract he had ever signed. The little girl who had once lived in fear and hunger now smiled and laughed every day. Lily started eating regular meals again, and her cheeks became round and pink with health. She started drawing pictures of their family, just the 3 of them, and hung them proudly on the refrigerator with colorful magnets. In her drawings, David was always very tall with a big smile, Oliver was a chubby baby with curly hair, and she drew herself holding both their hands. Sometimes she would draw their mother Emma too, as an angel watching over them from a cloud in the sky. Oliver grew stronger and healthier with each passing day. His cheeks became round and pink, his eyes bright and curious about the world around him. He started laughing again, a sound that filled the house with joy and made David's heart feel lighter than it had in years. David hired a kind nanny named Mrs. Rodriguez to help during the day while he was at work, but he made sure to spend every free moment with his children. Mrs. Rodriguez was a grandmother herself, with gray hair and gentle hands that knew just how to take care of babies. She had raised 5 children of her own and several grandchildren, and she treated Lily and Oliver like they were her own family. She taught Lily how to help take care of Oliver in safe ways, like holding his bottle while he drank and singing to him when he was fussy. She also helped Lily catch up on her schoolwork, because Victoria had often kept her home from school as punishment, making her fall behind in reading and math. One evening, 6 months after Victoria left their lives forever, David found Lily sitting by Oliver's crib, gently singing a lullaby their mother used to sing when Lily was very small. It was a song about angels watching over children while they slept, keeping them safe from all the scary things in the world. Oliver was smiling and reaching up toward his big sister with his tiny hands, making happy babbling sounds as if he was trying to sing along. The baby was healthy and strong now, with chubby cheeks and bright eyes that sparkled with curiosity and love. His hair had grown thick and curly, just like his mother's had been, and he had learned to sit up by himself and play with colorful toys. "Daddy," Lily said when she noticed her father watching from the doorway, "I'm not scared anymore. I know you'll always take care of us." Her voice was confident and happy, so different from the frightened whisper she'd used when Victoria was hurting them. David walked over and hugged his daughter tightly, tears of happiness in his eyes. "I promise you, sweetheart, never again will anyone hurt you or Oliver. We're a family, and families take care of each other. Always." As he looked at his 2 children, healthy and happy and safe, David knew that the most important business he would ever manage was being their father. All his companies and contracts and meetings seemed unimportant compared to making sure Lily and Oliver felt loved and protected every single day. The mansion was filled with laughter again, echoing through rooms that had been silent and cold for too long. Every morning when Lily asked for milk for Oliver's bottle, David would smile and say, "Of course, my dear," as much as he needs, always. He never wanted his children to worry about having enough food or enough love ever again. The kitchen, once a place of fear and hunger, became a warm gathering place where they ate meals together and Oliver sat in his high chair, making happy messes with his baby food. The broken glass was gone, the dented wall was repaired, and fresh flowers in the garden filled the air with sweet perfumes. Years later, when Oliver was old enough to understand, Lily would tell him the story of how their father came home just in time to save them both. She would explain how sometimes people do terrible things, but love and family always win in the end. Oliver would listen with wide eyes, his small hand holding tight to his big sister's, grateful that she had been brave enough to protect him when he was too little to protect himself. Lily would tell him about their mother Emma too, showing him pictures and telling him stories about how much she had loved them both, even though she couldn't stay with them. David never remarried, choosing instead to focus all his love and attention on raising his children to be kind, strong, and happy. He dated a few women over the years, but none of them were right for his family. He wanted to make sure that anyone who came into their lives would love Lily and Oliver as much as he did, and that was a very high standard to meet. The children didn't need another mother figure who might hurt them. They needed their father to be present and loving, and that's exactly what David gave them. The story of little girl Sobbed begged just 1 spoon. He hasn't eaten 3 days. Until Millionaire returned, became a reminder to their family that love is more powerful than money, and that protecting each other is the most important job any family member can have. In their home, there was always enough food, enough love, and enough hope to last a lifetime. David learned that being wealthy didn't mean anything if you weren't rich in things that really mattered: time with family, trust between loved ones, and the knowledge that everyone in the house was safe and cared for. The mansion that had once echoed with cruelty and fear now rang with the sound of a happy family. Oliver's giggles as Lily played peek-boo with him, the sound of David reading bedtime stories, and the gentle conversations they shared over dinner each night. They had learned that home wasn't about having the most expensive furniture or the biggest house, but about having people who love you no matter what. People who would always make sure you had everything you needed, especially the simple but precious gift of knowing you were safe and cherished forever and always.